I'm Dave Wurzel, and you're watching PHTV4 Police Update. And today is kind of a special police update because we're going to do a little bit of a year in review. We have a special guest with us, Police Chief Bill Czajkowski from the Palos Heights Police Department. And we kind of have a lot to go through because we're going to get an update of what 2024 looked like for the department. And then also we'll talk a little bit about some things people should be mindful of. And before we get into that, Chief, though, I do want to ask you, I mean, you've been in law enforcement for a long time. Can you give us a quick, how did you get started in law enforcement? How long have you been with the department?
Sure. Thanks, Dave, for having me, one. I'm going on almost 40 years in law enforcement.
Wow.
So
congratulations.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
It's gone by with the snap of a finger, to be honest with you. Actually, I started my career as a part-time police officer in 1987, and in 1990 I was hired as a full-time police officer. And then in 1992 I was selected to go to the United States Customs Service, and I was serving as a task force officer. Back then I worked global narcotics, trafficking, and money laundering. After that I came back to the department as an officer in charge, and in 2000 I was promoted to sergeant. In 2007, I was promoted to deputy chief, and in 2022 to chief of police, whereas I currently serve right now.
Congratulations. And it sounds like a lot of, I would think, really important experience to kind of help you manage your current position.
Yes, yeah, it was a lot of experience that led up to this point in my career, and so I felt when I took this position on, I had a lot of knowledge, and I had a lot of knowledge that I could pass on to the department.
I was going to say then, on behalf of Palos Heights, thank you. We're very fortunate to have somebody with your background experience in that position.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Genuinely. And then, I want to ask about, because we were talking prior, and how many, if you could talk about how the Palos Heights department, maybe a little bit of the organizational structure, but how many officers you have, because I know you're getting an additional, but that's because of another thing that's going to be happening, right?
Yes.
I'm sounding vague and cryptic. Maybe you can clarify.
Sure. So presently we have 28 full-time sworn officers. That does not include our civilian employees. Recently, when we went to Mayor Strauss and the council and asked to hire a 29th person, the council approved the hiring of the 29th person, and that salary and benefits will be paid out of our drug asset forfeiture fund. So the 29th person that we're hiring will be a new young officer, and an officer from the department then is going to go to a FBI terrorism task force on a full-time basis. So he will serve the Department of Justice on that terrorism task force, representing our department, but investigating crimes throughout the South, major crimes throughout the southwest suburbs, violent crimes, crimes like that.
It seems like a really great opportunity to be able to work with that organization, but to be part of that network. Because I think we'd like to assume that, well, yeah, we have our borders, but crimes don't necessarily take place only within borders.
Right.
Or the bad guys don't only operate within borders. I mean, they cross them, and the type of crime, right? Is that
right. I mean, this is a global society that
yes,
we're in now,
yeah.
and in the old days, really crime didn't go outside our borders, but now with social media and the access to everything that people have now, it's worldwide,
yes.
It's nationwide.
And we'll talk a little bit about it later, but like the scams or internet crimes that take place over whether email, texting, or internet, yeah, that's definitely coming from outside Palos Heights, I would think, almost all the time.
Definitely.
Yeah. I have the question here, and I don't know if you want to speak to it a little bit. I've always asked of officers, what a typical day looks like. I mean, do you want to talk about a typical day for?
Sure. Well, in my, as a patrol sergeant, and as I was in charge of patrol operations as a deputy chief, so patrol is kind of my forte,
okay.
And they say that, and I agree, the patrol division is the backbone of any police department. So any investigation, anything that has to do with a crime or a problem within a neighborhood, that always starts with the patrol division. So what happens is, on a typical day, we run between 3 and 5 officers. Within that, there's a supervisor, there's a civilian community service officer, and then there's potentially 3 patrol officers. So the breakdown is typically an officer is assigned to a beat, so that the community is divided up into sections, and that officer is assigned to a section, what we refer to as a beat. And based on that, then we have a traffic car, so it'll handle all traffic-related incidents, speeding autos, anything related to traffic problems, accidents, things like that. And then, of course, the supervisor supervises them. So typically an officer comes in, they work a 12-hour shift, they come in, they check their email, there's a roll call. Usually there's a roll call training, and then the supervisor will go over what we call a critical reach. So critical reaches are sent out throughout Illinois, and a lot of them may pertain to our communities or communities surrounding us. So they'll go over the critical reaches, and then the officers go out and start their shifts. And that's pretty much it. They'll work their 12-hour shift, they'll answer their calls, they'll write their reports. And then in addition to that, there's always an investigative division working. Primarily they work 10-hour days and they work the day shift. So what the investigative division does is initially a patrol officer might take a report. He'll take that investigation as far as he can. And then after that report is taken, then it's referred to investigations. Once the officer's shift ends at 6 o'clock, he's pretty much off. So then they'll go to investigations if the officer can't get a disposition within that 12-hour period. And then from there, our investigative division investigates reports that are referred up to them from the patrol division or investigations that they're presently working on.
Right, right. And I can see those are probably the types of crimes you think about it, like we see them on TV, involving maybe theft, I'm guessing. Is
Yeah, theft, burglaries.
Some type of assault, maybe.
An assault, a battery,
Yeah.
things like that. We have a very good patrol division. We have a great department, and many of our officers, they'll go get the warrants, for instance, if there's a battery, things like that. The investigative division is busy enough, so the patrol officers here try to get the warrants. A number of them will write search warrants. They'll do things like that. And typically, if it can be handled within their shift period, then they take care of everything.
As a matter of fact, maybe that's a good opportunity, because I wanted to get to some of the statistics you shared with us for 2024, which is what we'll take a look at now.
Okay.
The number, and I'd like you to put some of these in perspective for us. The first one you shared with us, so looking at 2024 in review for the Palos Heights Police Department, patrol investigations together, just over 17,000 incidents were handled.
Yes.
Can you put this in perspective? Like, what does that mean, and what types of things are they addressing? And how is that a big number, a small number, or how does it compare to the previous year?
It's a little bit lower from the previous year. So pretty much anytime a person calls 911, like for instance, if there's a suspicious person in your neighborhood, you call 911, then an incident is generated based on that. So it could be as simple as a suspicious person, or it could be as complex as a battery, a domestic battery, something like that, a traffic stop with guns and narcotics in it. So it varies, but anytime anyone calls 911, pretty much an incident is generated.
Okay, all right. And then some of these, and so some of those, yeah, we're familiar with that type of call. There were a couple numbers I want to ask about, because they seem impressive, but I don't have the context, and maybe you can speak to it. We're always concerned, we have bars, we have restaurants in town, people are drinking alcohol, like DUIs in the city. What's happened with that one? The number you had here, 34 DUIs?
Yes.
It seems low to me, but I'm honestly not sure.
It is low, and every year it goes down, and that's a number personally that I like to see go down. In the day, we would probably generate 150, 160 DUIs a year. But I think, because of PSA announcements and Uber and Lyft, the rideshare services, as the officers will tell you now at 2 o'clock when the bars are closing, you'll see a line of these ride-sharing services in front of the bars. And I think especially the younger generations who typically visit the bars and the restaurants in the later evenings, they have become more educated and they've become smarter. So they're taking advantage of these rideshare services. And for us, we couldn't be happier with that, because, as you know, I mean, tragedy can easily strike with an impaired motorist causing an accident.
Right, yeah, it's a bad decision that's going to lead to bad stuff. I'm glad that number is coming down, and yeah, hopefully it'll continue to trend down. Right?
Yeah, and I agree. I like to see that number lower and lower every year. It doesn't mean that the guys and girls out there are not doing their job. It just means that people are taking advantage of these rideshare services.
Right. And there's another question number here that I want to ask you about. You've got the average police response time for 2024 at 3 minutes and 43 seconds.
Yes.
Right? And can you put that in context? Like, what does that mean? Because I'm imagining there are some cases where it's much quicker because that's an average, and under what conditions it might be longer.
Right. Well, what will happen here on an average day is officers' calls might stack up. So if a call of a higher priority comes in, the officers then will answer that call much more quicker. So this is just the average of the 3 minutes 43 seconds, but there's many times where our response time, for instance, if they have to go lights and siren to a domestic, a fight call, something like that, the response time is much quicker than that. It could be a minute, it could be a 2 minute range. So, but overall, this is an amazing response time for a community the size of ours. And we also have to contend with traffic congestion in the early morning hours and in the afternoon. And the officers here, because we have beat integrity where they stay in their beats. So when a call comes, they can easily go to the call within their beat and answer the call.
Right. It's more immediate and how quickly they can get to it.
Yes.
And that's a good point, the distinction. But there is a priority sense here.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like for instance, if there's a horrific crime going on, it's not going to take them 3 minutes to get there. They're going to get there much quicker.
Right. Okay. Now, we started to talk about this. Maybe I'm circling back to it. When investigations are taking place, and if it's officers collecting information, maybe evidence, certainly investigators, it looks to me like these are big numbers. Maybe they're not. But I mean, in my head, I'm thinking that because this is a lot of work to process the amount of evidence
it is.
The department collects. 2,000 total pieces of evidence in possession right now, is that right?
Yes, yes. And that's after they purged about 1,800 items. So
wow.
It's always a revolving door. So the integrity of evidence is very important. We have a system where everything is barcoded in.
Yeah.
The system is called the Beast. And as you know, we go to a private crime laboratory that processes our DNA, our fingerprints, all that stuff. So the integrity of the evidence in the chain of custody is so important. So they're always, the investigative division, they're always on the lookout for purging evidence that has to be purged, destruction of evidence that has to be destructed, and returning evidence to rightful owners. We might have a crime, a burglary, or a theft or something like that where we've had to take possession of that evidence. And then we want to get it back to the owner as soon as we can. And some evidence we have to keep forever. So there's evidence in there that we can't get rid of. Related to a homicide or related to a serious crime. So that evidence always has to remain in our vault.
Okay. I'm just listening to all the responsibilities of an officer. We're thinking, well, it's just Palos Heights, but that doesn't mean that the level of professionalism drops. It doesn't mean that serious things don't have to be addressed or handled properly.
Right,
okay?
No, definitely.
And I mean, I'm going to put another hat on the department. You have a crisis intervention team, and they help deal with this area, but there are other crisis interventions. The other number of mental health cases, because you will respond to those also.
Yes. It's become a big priority in our profession, the mental health cases, because in the old days we just didn't have the resources to handle situations like that. So really the only resource was when you were dealing with a violent mental health person was to arrest them. They would go to jail, but they wouldn't get the help that they needed. So there's a couple officers within our department that quickly saw this trend coming our way, and they approached me about 4 or 5 years ago with this mental health program, and they were properly trained. And so we deal with a lot of mental health cases. Having a hospital within our jurisdiction, we deal with a number of mental health cases. Residents within our community we deal with, and then we have people from outside our community that come here because they've heard about our program.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so we've had about 147 cases that we've dealt with this year. And, a number of those are suicidal people, people suffering from schizophrenia, veterans that are in crisis.
Yeah.
And you know, so I think really since COVID, the instance of mental health related issues really flourished because people didn't have an opportunity to see a therapist,
Right.
weren't continuing with their prescribed therapy. And since that time, we've really seen a high number of.
So this might be unfortunate where the number has gone up, but on the plus side, it sounds like you, especially with the crisis intervention team, you're maybe a little bit better equipped to address it.
Definitely, and we also partner with Trinity Services, and they have, if it's beyond what the officer can do on scene, our officers carry iPads, so they can actually, with that iPad, they can speak to a clinician from Trinity Services, and that clinician can help address the problem and help get some referrals out.
Well, I just, again, the responsibilities of an officer that, you know, I think there's that image of what a cop's job looks like, but I mean, it's way more involved than.
Yes, it is.
Well, let's turn to, how about, here's one I'm going to say probably falls in the good news category, the task force officers who are involved in some of these other crimes that maybe cross community borders, or you're part of other organizations where you share in what is collected, I guess.
Yes.
Forfeiture is what we're really talking
Right,
about.
drug asset forfeiture.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So we have three officers actually assigned to federal task forces on a full-time basis, Department of Treasury and Department of Justice task force officers. So based on their assignments, they work narcotics investigations, money laundering investigations. So when there's a seizure that task force officer is part of, we get a part of that seizure that comes back to the city. And over the years, we've received millions and millions of dollars. And a lot of that asset forfeiture money pays for all of our equipment, our vehicles, paid for the building of our station. So that frees up money that the taxpayer would normally pay for, but it's not. Essentially, bad guys are paying for all our law enforcement equipment.
And so you've got here last year in forfeiture, you collected $350,000?
Yeah, that was cleared to us, and actually that was a slow year.
Really?
I mean, there's been years where we've collected. It's ebbs and flows.
Sure.
There's been years where we've collected millions of dollars.
Wow.
And it's just as quickly. We always refer to there's money in the pipeline. It's how quickly Department of Justice and Department of Treasury frees that money up and actually writes the check to the city of Bill Sites.
And you just started to speak to it, so maybe this is a really good transition. We have this guy here. Do you want to show what?
Yeah, this is part of our drug asset forfeiture money. This year we replaced our body camera, or we purchased body cameras as part of a state mandate, and we purchased new in-car cameras. And part of that, this is a body camera. This is pretty much what every department in the state of Illinois will start to carry now. It's very small, and it records any interaction that the officer has with the community during a police-related function. So it's just another tool that we have.
And they're wearing this on the front of their.
They wear this on the front of their vest. So in addition to this, the car also has a camera.
Okay.
So that would record the initial traffic stop, and so all the officers have these cameras, have this technology. You know, the unfortunate thing is when the state implements mandates like this, they don't implement
They don't give
funding.
you money to go with
right.
it.
So between our car cameras,
That's frustrating.
yeah, our car cameras and our body cameras, there was about a $300,000 venture.
Wow.
And you know, there's reoccurring costs with these cameras. You know, you have to pay for the storage. Storage is a big thing with these cameras, and there's so much video storage that we have. We have 10 patrol cars that have cameras in them. In addition to that, and then as soon as they get into the station, that's all video recorded. So there's just a lot of storage and a lot of video data we deal with.
There were technology upgrades, and thankfully, through the forfeiture money, we're able to pay for some of that, if not all of it, it sounds like.
Yes, yeah, we did have, in addition to the body cameras and the in-car cameras, now we're up to 9 license plate readers that are throughout the community. And essentially what a license plate reader is it records license plates that are within our community of people that are driving down our streets. And what the officers can do is they can put a hit on that plate, or another municipality can put a hit on that plate. So as a result of those license plates readers, we've solved a number of crimes within our community, theft crimes, burglaries, things like that. And then the officers will get a hit from their license plate reader, for instance, if there's a stolen auto or whatever. And so they've recovered a number of stolen autos that have come through our community just based on the license plate reader hit, and they get a notification within their car.
Wow. What a great technology.
Yeah.
How about, we've talked about what 2024 looked like. Can you talk a little bit about, like, how about some goals? I'm imagining you look at 2025 and whether there's trends out there or things that you're going to have to deal with. Can you talk about goals or objectives for the department coming up in the next year?
Yeah, for 2025, it's making sure we get that 29th officer hired and up and running, and where he or she becomes a viable part of the force. We're looking to expand our video surveillance system that we have within the city. Presently, we have a camera in our municipal lot that links to our LPR cameras. We've entered into a joint agreement with a neighboring municipality to share a camera that'll kind of cover the area of Palos Hospital. And there's also another camera that we're going to offer an agreement up for sharing that covers further down on Southwest Highway. That'll cover like the metro area, like the 1800 block of Southwest Highway. So, it is my goal to increase that network that we have. Unfortunately, technology is expensive, so I'm going to rely on these task force guys to make some money and allow us to do that.
Good.
Our IDOT grants, we feel they're very important. So we get a set amount of money from the Illinois Department of Transportation every year for specialized grants to combat impaired motorists driving and distracted driving. So we try to time those through holiday periods where there's a high instance of traffic, and there might be parties associated with the holidays like 4th of July, New Year's Eve, things like that. So we're always looking to get grant money from that. We were able to, we purchased an EV vehicle recently, and we were able to get a grant from Commonwealth Edison to pay for a portion of that EV vehicle. So we're always looking for things like that. And then we're always looking for money to continue to fund our cameras, something that asset forfeiture money might not have to use, and the taxpayers. There is grant money out there. We're just always looking for it. We did get a $10,000 grant for our body cameras from our insurance provider recently. So we're always chipping away at that dollar amount.
It sounds like there's a lot of really good things going on, and it sounds like, based on what you're able to do and what your goals are going for, you're able to function at a very high level, I would imagine.
We do. We're a very high-tech police department, and a lot of this stuff that we have it's needed, and we're fortunate because we have the asset forfeiture money, and Mayor Strauss and the City Council, they're very pro-police, so there's very few things that we want for, and with that, it comes a very safe community.
Yeah. Maybe that's, I had a final question for you, maybe it's related to that then. Safety tips for our community, if you can share a couple for us now. I know that there are the types of things that people have to deal with change, or there's new scams out there, there's other things to watch out for. What would be some tips you would suggest,
Well, lately, what we're seeing,
safety or scam, whatever is,
what we're seeing is, as you know, there are a lot of seniors in our community, and unfortunately, people tend to take advantage of seniors within our community. So I think what we're seeing are scams related to, computer scams where somebody has gotten onto their computer now, is requesting money to repair it. The grandparent scam is always a big thing, or a scam that they're in trouble by the IRS. So and we've had a number of people give, six-figure dollar amounts to unknown people.
They think they're helping somebody.
Right,
yeah.
They think they're helping, or they think they're in trouble.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of our elderly citizens are afraid to go to family members for fear that it might restrict some of their freedoms, and so they just do it. So my thought is, if they don't feel comfortable going to a family member or friend, to call the police. Let us determine if it's actually a legitimate organization, or if it's a scam, or a fraudster's taking advantage of them. They come in here and to our station. On a weekly basis, and and you feel so bad for them because they've been scammed and a lot of money's missing now. And really, it's a matter of we serve our community, we're willing to come out and we're willing to look at things and say, hey, this is a fraudster or this is not. So that's my biggest thing that I would implore to the citizens of our community. Go to a friend, go to a family member. If you can't do that, go to the police. Don't send any money out. Don't let anyone pick any money up from your home. Immediately, go to the police.
That's got to be a sign too. Any immediate, like they need the money immediately.
Yes.
Really, can we wait a half hour?
Right.
For me to, or 15 minutes even, right, to call a family member or call the police department or a friend. I mean,
right.
That's not it's not going to change the dynamic of, is this legitimate or is this real?
Right, exactly. And that's the thing what we tell them. And, a couple of these instances where there was actually several drops of money that were picked up where the resident went to their bank, took large amounts of cash out, and dispersed it in 2 or 3 pickups. And basically all they were doing was the fraudster was hiring a rideshare service to come and pick up the money, and the money's gone after that. The rideshare driver doesn't know what he or she's doing. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Good tip there. Please.
And then, of course, to always lock your cars.
Yeah.
In our community, a lot of people feel safe, but it's important that they always lock their cars and don't leave valuables in the cars, because we're still experiencing unlocked cars with valuables, or a computer on a laptop on a front seat, and somebody might break the window and grab it.
That's a really good point. We feel safe, and that's good, but it doesn't mean that you should let down your guard. In this case, it's a simple thing. Lock your car.
Exactly.
Yeah, don't leave something visible. Yeah. And I want to ask you a couple, because this is another one, and I know we've talked about this before, other areas of safety that people should be mindful of. And I think typically we're talking about like traffic stops or traffic situations. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, the biggest thing is nowadays is when you get pulled over. They should share this in driver's ed. I don't think they do that, but early on you should know that when you get pulled over, I mean, the officer doesn't know what he's encountering. He's pulling over a car. It could be late at night. It's dark. So the biggest thing is pull over, help out the officer, help out yourself. Pull over in a safe, well-lit area. In terms of the driver of the vehicle that's getting pulled over, you should always just leave your hands on the wheel, and that's what I like. When the officer walks up to the car, don't be moving in your glove box or moving in your center console. If the officer wants a document, he'll ask you for a document. You know what? There's no rush, and let the officer get there and just say, hey, my driver's license or my insurance card's in my glove box. Can I reach over and grab it? And the biggest thing now is what we're seeing is so many people have conceal and carry, and so they're carrying firearms with them. Perfectly legal, and we're totally fine with it. It's just that we don't like surprises. So if you tell an officer, when you come up, just say, officer, I have conceal and carry, I have a firearm on me. We're totally fine with that, but it's nice to know. In those situations, because there's been a number of arrest situations where the officer gets the person out of the car and there's a gun falling or there's a gun in between the seats, and they might have legitimate conceal and carry, but they don't tell the officer, so that tends to amp things up.
Right, that changes the whole dynamic of that situation.
It does.
And the officer has to react in seconds, like, whereas if everything is up front and communicated clearly, you know, the importance of that. Thank you for that. Did you want to mention one other?
Yeah, the Scots Law. That is actually a law, and that was implemented years ago because of a Chicago fireman that was killed on an expressway. They were working in an accident scene, and he was killed by a motorist that, for whatever reason, ran into this officer, might have been impaired, ran into this fire official. Recently, there was a state trooper killed on the roadway. A driver just ran the poor trooper over. So the Scots Law is designed for EMS, fire, police, IDOT workers, tow trucks. So when there's a vehicle on the side of the road, a traffic stop, fire department, or even a tow truck towing a vehicle, you're supposed to slow down and you're supposed to move over. And if people slow down and move over under those circumstances, these poor frontline workers wouldn't be getting killed. So I just remind our residents and anyone within the community that this is an actual law, and just to slow down and move over when they encounter situations like this on the roadways.
It seems pretty clear the importance of the safety in that situation, because you have people outside outside their vehicle on the side,
Right.
next to moving traffic.
Right.
It seems, yes, slow down, move over.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Chief Czajkowski, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm very, very informative. I hope 2025 is a good year for the department. Maybe the right
I think it
numbers
will
come
be.
down and the right numbers go up.
Yeah, yeah. Right now we're off to a good start. We've hired a number of very good people.
Good.
We have a number of promotions that are coming up, highly qualified people, and I'm looking forward to their future. My days are numbered here.
I've heard.
At the police
We're
department.
going to miss you.
Yes, and but I've served. I've had a great career. The Mayor Strauss, the City Council, they've been an amazing group to serve, and we have very talented young people that are behind me that will definitely take the department into the next step.
Good. I would verify, the people I've met in the department are wonderful. I know on behalf of PHTV4, thank you very much, and the community. I've always had great experiences with officers when I've had a chance to chat and visit with them. You know, your leadership has been so critical and such a huge role in not just the safety in the community, but I think the atmosphere, you know.
Well, thank you.
So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll miss you, but I'm hoping we'll still see you around.
Hey, I'll be around.
Okay.
So you know, I grew up in this community. I've been around this community. I'm going to be 60, so for close to 59 years I've been around,
Right.
so I'll still be around.
You don't look 60, so congratulations on that too then.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
I appreciate it.
I'm Dave Wurzel, and you've been watching PHTV4 Police Update. We've been talking with Palos Heights Police Chief Bill Czajkowski. Thank you for watching.